This is a video on 5 real paranormal and ghost-related stories that have been sent in to me by my subscribers. They are in no particular order, and in 2 of the stories I've included proof with pictures or audio. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and let's begin. My friends, we'll call them Mary and Elizabeth, and I live in a very small town with a lot of back roads, and we take them often to go to the river. There was this old, creepy, abandoned house that was on the way there that we had never even thought of stopping to look at. Well, that was before our Marine friend came home to visit. We'll call him Mike. Mary was always up to go, as she was into creepy things and didn't scare easily, but Elizabeth and I were not quite as brave. So when Mike came home, Mary suggested that we all go, and if Elizabeth and I felt unsafe, Mike would be there to make us feel better. We headed off at about noon so that we would have plenty of light to explore by. The door was open when we got there, so it wasn't hard to get in. We were all immediately drawn to a large room that had a desk and some file cabinets inside of it. There wasn't much in the file cabinets, but the desk was full of notebooks and important papers. All the others were looking through drawers and important papers, but I decided to look through the notebooks. I opened the first one I came to and saw that it was a woman's handwriting. The woman who stayed in this room must have used them for journals. What I read in them sent shivers up my spine. They were journals of a grown woman who lived with her parents. She didn't live with them by choice. Her parents were very religious and thought that if she left the house, quote, the evils of the world would corrupt her. I read that she wasn't allowed to have visitors and that her parents brought her food to her room. I can't remember many details because this was years ago, but I remember feeling scared and hopeless. And then we heard something fall upstairs, and so naturally Mike and Mary wanted to go see what it was. The upstairs was full of canned food and clothes, like they had been preparing for something bad to happen. I told them that I was ready to go and that we should come back another time. I know they didn't want to leave yet, but they respected my wishes. Fast forward a few weeks. Mary and I had bought a Ouija board and wanted to try it out. We didn't bother contacting Elizabeth about going with us because we knew she hated Ouija boards, but we did call Mike and made plans to go that night. We packed up the board, some candles, and a camera and made our way out there at about 11 p.m. Mary set up the board on a small table in the room, Mike lit the candles, and I set up the camera on the windowsill. We stood around the board, and before touching it, we went over the rules with Mike to ensure our safety. Then we all put our hands on the planchette. I didn't plan on talking, and I'm not going to lie, I was scared as shit, but I trusted my friends. Mary spoke first, asking if anyone was there. No answer. She asked again. Once again, no answer. Then Mike laughed and looked at her and said,
"They're probably too chicken."
This really set me off. I was already scared and he wanted to taunt things that could be here. I yelled at him and told him this is exactly why we went over the rules. Don't laugh at it and don't challenge it. Then the planchette moved to no. I looked at Mary and then to Mike. Guys, that's not funny, knock it off. They both denied doing it, and then Mary asked it a question.
Are you a man or a woman?
M-A-N, man.
Did you write those journals?
The planchette moved to no.
Do you know who did?
At that moment, my camera beeped and fell out of the window. It was fully charged when we got there. The planchette moved. M-Y-D-A-U-G-H-T-E-R. My daughter. I felt a burn in my throat and looked at Mary and said shakily, I want to stop. Let's just say goodbye. I'm scared. You guys can do it and I'll just watch. They both told me no because it might scare him away. I was not happy with this answer. I closed my eyes and cried silently while they asked questions. I know, I'm a wuss. I don't remember many of the next questions, but the one that did it for me was when Mike asked if he was good or bad. We waited a few seconds and the planchette started moving slowly. It landed on the moon, which means demon or bad spirit. I yelled at them and told them to say goodbye. They asked a few more questions and then finally said goodbye. We packed up our things and I was the first one out the door. Mary and Mike lingered a little longer and started towards the door. Mary had just stepped out when Mike decided he had one last thing to say. He turned around, laughed, and cursed at whatever was there, calling it a pussy and everything else. Then he turned around and started to step out of the door when he fell forward and screamed. I thought he had tripped and went to go help him, but he started running towards us. He told us that he was pushed and that his back hurts. I got behind him and pulled up his shirt to discover that he had 3 red scratch lines down his back. We bolted to his car and heard things banging around in the house. He sped off and we went straight to Mary's house. I didn't sleep much that night and refused to ever go back to that house. The marks on Mike's back healed within a few days and he really had no interest in going back either. I'm glad it was only scratches and not something more serious. I was in the middle of work yesterday when my mom started to blow up my phone, which is weird because she usually never calls me that late. I texted her to see what was up and we had this exchange. There will be a picture on screen right now showing the conversation. At first, I couldn't get the message to play, so I didn't think much of it. My mom has always been into ghost stuff and I'm your average atheist that thinks it's all bullshit. If you're unable to look at the screen, my mom was basically texting me freaking out, telling me my dead grandpa had sent her a voicemail from a number that doesn't exist and she was wondering how something like this could have happened. Then she called me on my brother's phone and played the voicemail through that and a shiver went down my spine. We talked on the phone and she said the message came from a number that was just all zeros and the phone never rang, she just got the voicemail. After I got off work, I sent the audio my mom texted me, converted it to MP3, and got it to play. What you're about to hear is the voicemail she received, followed by an old video of my grandpa speaking in comparison.
This is Dad. I was trying to contact you. This is Dad.
To honor you today, okay?
Okay.
All right. And we have Chuck.
Yeah, I know him.
You know him. I know you know him.
Now, 2 things immediately jumped out at me. This is Dad, I was trying to contact you. This is Dad is not at all like any voicemail he would have left. His voicemails would always be something like, hello, I was just calling to see how things were, call me back when you get the chance, stuff like that. It's especially weird that he had to reinforce, this is Dad. The second strange part is he was dealing with mesothelioma the last few years of his life, so the fluid in his lungs and being drugged made his voice a lot more slow and gravelly. That was his voice before he got sick. Also, he died in March, and that part makes this strange as well. I don't really know how to explain it. If it was an old recording that someone sent, no one in the family would know where the recording came from to start with. No one that would have that message has a shred of technical knowledge to send audio directly to voicemail on a blank number. My family can hardly even log into Facebook. The only non-supernatural explanation I can think of is that it's a really old voicemail that just now got sent. Either it being a delayed voicemail, are those even a thing? Can you even send a future voicemail? Or it just never got sent until something triggered it, like maybe it was from his old cell phone that someone turned on after a while. Again, I don't even know if that kind of stuff even happens. It's really hard to give a reasonable explanation. You don't really think straight when your mom gets a voicemail from your grandpa that died almost 6 months ago. And as for the wrong number theory, the voices are just too similar in my opinion. I'll play the video one last time before going to the next story.
This is Dad. I was trying to contact you. This is Dad.
To honor you today, okay?
Okay.
All right. And we have Chuck.
Yeah, I know him.
You know him. I know you know him.
When I was 14, I was sharing a hotel with my parents for a basketball tournament out of state. I was sleeping on the floor on the other side of the room because there was no pull-out couch or extra bed. I know I fell asleep and the room was very dark, but at one point I opened my eyes and could see perfectly everywhere inside of the room. The room had a slight yellow tint to it. I saw a very pretty girl about my age turn the corner and walk out of the bathroom. She was carrying a long piece of wood. I'm not sure how else to describe it. It looked like a wand and the wood had holes all over it. I just remember she was very lovely and maybe had white clothes on. I specifically remember I wasn't scared at all. I did, however, call out, wondering what she was doing. I said something along the lines of, "Hi, who are you and what are you doing?" She looked at me, but she didn't respond. The next part is so hard to understand. My father apparently had heard me call out with the whole, "Hi, who are you and what are you doing" thing. My dad says he woke up and saw me, but it was actually her, and he got out of bed to flip on the light switch to the bathroom and help me with whatever I was doing. She turned her head and looked from me to him as he got up. Keep in mind, I'm watching all of this go down from across the room. My dad reaches around her to turn on the light, and in her last millisecond, she manages to look back at me. My dad flips on the light switch and she's immediately gone. Now the lights are on and my dad is looking where she was standing. I call out, "Dad, did you see her too?" My dad then responds with, "Kate, I thought that was you." I explained that I was over here the whole time and that I saw her walk out of the bathroom and I didn't know who she was. We couldn't explain it. We both definitely saw her walk out of the bathroom. We sat there for maybe 20 minutes recounting what we had seen over and over. My dad then prayed over me and we somehow went back to sleep. Another crazy part about the whole thing, my mom, who has a horrible time sleeping for more than 2 hours at a time, slept through the whole thing and still said she had never had a more restful night of sleep that she could ever remember. Can anyone explain what this occurrence could have been? Was she a ghost, a memory, an angel? Why couldn't she talk? Why was she there? Why could we both see her? I've always told this true story as a party trick, but lately I'm really hoping to do more investigating. This story is based in mid to north Saskatchewan, Canada. At the time, I was 17 years old, and the perspective is from a female who is skeptical of ghosts, monsters, you name it. You couldn't get me to believe that shit. Saskatchewan has a reputation of being super flat and all prairie, but if you go more up north, it's full of lush green forest and hills. And for some odd reason, plenty of abandoned houses, churches, and small schools in the middle of nowhere. Luckily for me, I used to live in the middle of nowhere. Before I had moved out for college, my brother and I lived with our father in the childhood home that we grew up in. And when I say middle of nowhere, I mean we lived on the outskirts of this huge provincial forest. Neighbors were far away, but we knew everyone from grids away, and the closest city is a 30-minute drive. I had the benefit of being neighbors with my best friends. Us three have known each other since we were 4, and we're actually still best friends to this day. We liked to take our friends who didn't live where we did to these abandoned buildings and told the stories we were told as to why they were abandoned. For example, there was a small building for worship that had a priest hang himself inside of it and also had a small graveyard of maybe 5 headstones, all of them for children under the age of 5. We heard a noise one time while we were all there and we all booked it. My one friend, who was way at the back, said he was hit or kicked by something on the leg and then a bruise appeared not long after. But the creepy part was he was far behind us and you could see where he fell. There were no sticks or anything, and this was in the wintertime, so snow was high and you could easily track your footsteps. But that's kinda just a backstory for everything. Now for the actual story. We like to show people this abandoned church at the end of the road near the entrance of the provincial forest. This church is standing alone, a couple of trees surrounding it, but it's mainly an open area. There used to be a mass grave around it, and it had been there until a couple months before this incident. The odd thing about it was, the ground looked like it hadn't been disturbed once, but all the headstones were gone. Of course I was like, fuck it, it's nothing, don't worry about it guys. So the group that was with me was my friends and my boyfriend at the time. Cody, Kennedy, Megan, and Wendell. When we approached this church, we had to pry the door open, and when we did, it took us a lot of courage to go in. I had been in here many times before, but the door thing was new. There's a couple steps in the entrance and then the main portion of the church. Well, here is when shit gets creepy. There was red paint or something all over the walls and in a language and symbols I couldn't recognize myself. I explained that this is new because this wasn't here a few months ago, and there was this weird altar with what looked like blood and some tufts of fur but no body anywhere. We then heard noises under the church, but there was no basement. That was what did it for us. All the girls ran back to the truck, tails between our legs. On the way out, Megan tripped on something. We run back to grab her to only notice that there was a fucking noose on the ground. Why the fuck is there even a noose here? Meanwhile, the guys are laughing and calling us babies with overactive imaginations. We're standing at the truck facing the church, and as the guys walk out, I snap a picture of them. The next day, I was looking at the photos I had taken last night of our adventures, and I scrolled past the one I took of the guys next to the church. My stomach dropped and I became anxious. There was only 5 of us during that night, and I only took a photo of 2 people, but in the photo, far off to the left, there was a fucking figure or ghost or something standing there. How did we not see it last night? I show everyone, and collectively the group got quiet and questioned what it was. But it's clearly a person or ghost holding something. The picture is on screen right now. That day is the day I became less skeptical about that shit. I mean, obviously nothing like that has happened to me personally before, but now I have that photo. I haven't gone back there yet, and I don't think I plan on it. I was about maybe 10 when this happened. My sister and I were spending the summer with our grandparents at the time. I have insomnia and have had it ever since I was very young, so I wasn't asleep. I usually just stared at the ceiling and thought about a lot, but I had to go to the bathroom, so I got up and crept quietly to the bathroom down the hall. I never particularly liked this bathroom, especially at night. It gave me the creeps and made me feel really uneasy, but I sucked it up and hurried anyway. I did my business and was in the process of washing my hands when I looked up into the mirror, and there was this huge black mass hovering over me. My eyes had gone wide and I couldn't move. It was like I was frozen. And instantly I felt this emotion come over me, like whatever the hell this was wanted to hurt me. I was standing there for a solid 15 seconds before I dashed out of the bathroom. I ran back into my room and woke up my sister. She was extremely irritated that I had woken her up, but she came back with me anyway. I walked behind her, holding her hand as we tiptoed to the bathroom, careful not to wake up our grandparents. When we got there, the mass was gone. I walked in and looked around, but it was definitely gone. My sister then came to the conclusion that I was just tired and delirious. A couple of weeks after that night, I was out in the back helping my grandfather water some of the plants that he had been growing. My sister had ran out to us, screaming and crying with tears streaming down her face. My grandfather and I dropped everything to see what was going on. We couldn't understand what she was saying between her uncontrollable sobs, but we were able to calm her down enough to understand her. She told us that she was in the bathroom doing her hair when she felt like she was being watched. So she looked around to see if any one of us was walking down the hall or something. She said that she had seen something black standing in front of the doorway to the room that we were staying in. She said that this thing had rushed at her and she felt hands press against her stomach. What makes this even more chilling is when we lifted up her shirt, there were 2 huge bruises on her stomach. She then said she believed me about the night I had my own encounter with whatever the damn thing was. But it was clear that it wanted to do harm. My sister and I went back with our parents, and my grandparents have since moved from that house. The experience has not left my mind, and I hope whatever it was doesn't come back.